Hello friends, tonight we're going to take an in-depth look at two of my favorite all-metal double-action single-action pistols, the CZ-SP-01 Tactical and the Beretta 92A1. So, you've decided to buy a very large and very nice all-metal pistol. Which do you choose? This video will be a bit longer as we're going to try something new and delve deeper into how these firearms operate mechanically. I've noticed from some of our conversations in the comments that you all are interested in that sort of thing, and I'm certainly interested in it, so let's give this a whirl, and you can tell me what you think of it. Also, this video was requested by commenter PHVDG. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I appreciate you telling me what you'd like to see, so here we go. Hopefully you'll find this interesting. I'd also like to take a moment to express something that I don't say nearly often enough. My very small community of viewers is made up of the nicest folks in the world, and we have really interesting conversations in the comments. Every day, I look forward to seeing what y'all are saying to each other and to me. I really appreciate that you take the time to share your thoughts, and we talk about anything from philosophy to firearms. I really enjoy it. You all mean the world to me, and I very much appreciate your support. Thank you so much. So, both of these are exceptional pistols. Both represent the best of Cold War fighting technology, and both of these are just as fun to shoot now as they were 40 years ago. You ought to have one of each, but if you have to choose, maybe this information will be helpful. So, our features. Both of these are very large and very beautiful double-action, single-action guns that are hammer-fired. So what does that mean, double-action, single-action? What does hammer-fired mean? Well, hammer-fired means that this hammer back here is going to hit your firing pin and set off the round. And there's our decocker, which releases the hammer all the way or partially without setting off a round, which is really good. Obviously, if you're having to drop that hammer and you don't want to put a hole in your floor, or, you know, if you're not pointing the gun in a safe direction, perhaps your foot, but hopefully that will not happen, so please follow the safety rules. So double action means that two actions are being performed with the pull of the trigger. So as we're pulling the trigger back, the hammer is moving with it, and then the second action is performed when the hammer is released, and it will hit the firing pin and fire off the round. Single action means that only one action is being performed by the trigger pull. You can see our hammer's already cocked back, and then when we pull the trigger, the hammer goes forward, hits the firing pin, and sets off the primer and the round with it. So hopefully that's interesting to you if you're new to firearms or have just owned maybe striker-fired guns or something. The CZ is decocker only from the factory. There's no safety, no manual safety, I should say. And it kind of goes to a half cock when you use the decocker. There is a version that replaces the decocker with a safety. That's the non-tactical SP-01, I think. And the 92A1 comes from the factory with a safety decocker, although mine is decocker only. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But yeah, so you can see pretty similar in that regard. A lot of people are going to the decocker only on these Berettas. The Beretta has an aluminum frame, making the 92A1 substantially lighter at 33.3 ounces versus the 40.5 ounces of the all-steel SP-01, and you really do notice that difference. The CZ has a magazine capacity of 18 rounds. Yeah. And then the Beretta has a magazine capacity of 17. Both of these guns have really nice, robust steel magazines with relatively large capacities. Not much difference there, really. And both of these guns sport a lovely 1913 rail, which, I don't know, these days, I don't know if I would really buy a gun that didn't have the 1913 rail. It's just nice to be able to add the light. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would buy a historical firearm or something like that for nostalgia, but I don't know if I would buy a new gun to stick on my nightstand to potentially defend my home with if it didn't have the 1913 rail. So I very much like to see that. Meprolite night sights come standard on the CZ, while the Beretta comes with metal 3-dot sights. You can see those Meprolite night sights. I never can tell how well those are going to show up on the camera, but yeah, night sights. 3-dot metal sights. The sights on the CZ are substantially larger, as you can see, and the sights on the Beretta are smaller. I don't really prefer one over the other. I feel like I have more precision with the Beretta sights, and then you get night sights with the CZ. So yeah, both have their pros and cons. Really, though, all the other stuff is pretty small. These guns have completely different operating principles, and they feel very different to shoot as a result. So we're going to take a look inside of these and talk a little bit about what that means and why and how these operate. So yeah, let's do the CZ first. And we're going to do it first because it is difficult to field strip, especially compared to the Beretta. There's really no cool way to do it. You're going to look like a horse's ass no matter how you do it. So you'll probably see me pull the gun away from the table and closer to my body for leverage a few times. So I apologize in advance for the terrible camera work. So let's talk about this. We've got to align this notch here with the equivalent notch on the frame. And then we're going to pop this pin out here through and then pull it this way. Now, easy enough, right? A lot of guns do that. It's the classic John Browning way to disassemble the pistol. The problem is these are very tightly fit, and it's not going to come out quite that easily, and we're going to have to take the magazine here and poke it through, and it's going to be really obnoxious. So just wanted to warn you about that. All right, so see, we've got our notches lined up there. Then we're going to take this, press that through, which is really hard when you're leaning over a table. You got to bump the microphone a few times, and then out comes the pin. It's not as easy as you would think it would be. So, set that there. We'll take out our recoil spring and guide rod and take out our barrel. I have a handy towel here so that I don't get black carbony junk all over the place. I don't clean my guns as often as I should, and I'm starting to regret it. All right, now let's look at how the Beretta comes apart. Check this out. This is probably the easiest disassembly of any gun that I've ever owned, or hell, handled for that matter. So you push in this button on the side here, then you tilt this down and check this out. Oh hell, look at that. I shoot this Beretta extensively, and it rarely gets cleaned because I'm perpetually using it, so please excuse the mess. It is disgusting. I did not realize how dirty that is when I started this. I'm really sorry. My poor desk. Okay, so we've got everything kind of laid out here really haphazardly in the worst way. Okay, so the CZ operates via the classic Browning tilting barrel mechanism that we see on pretty much every gun that you can buy these days, with the exception of a lot of the stuff that Beretta makes, actually. So the CZ-75 has these lugs here that lock in to these equivalent spaces inside the slide there. You see that? This looks a lot like a Browning high power, doesn't it? Or if you haven't looked in a high power, it looks kind of like a 1911, right? So yeah, the CZ slide, it's really small. You're probably wondering what's the deal with that. It has to do with these inverted rails here. So the rails ride on the inside of the frame rather than on the outside, like the Beretta. Yeah, you see how these are on the outside? But these are on the inside. So it's not the slide is that much smaller. Don't get me wrong, it is smaller certainly than the Berettas, but it's not as small as it might seem when you first look at it. This puts a large portion of the slide inside the frame where you cannot grab it to manipulate the slide, and this makes the clearing of malfunctions potentially more difficult, but it is said to improve slide to frame fit and thereby accuracy. I don't really go around testing the bench accuracy of pistols, but CZ's definitely, they shoot where I point them, and I can confirm that the slide to frame fit is exceptional, and we'll look at that when we put the guns back together. This gun has better fitment than some of the $2,000 custom 1911s that I've tried. But to me, the bigger perk of the interior rails is the change to the feel of the recoil. The interior rails give us a smaller, lighter slide, mostly having less reciprocating mass really diminishes that felt recoil substantially. And the weight of the pistol helps also, but the slide is definitely a factor. And internally, CZ-75s and derived models, they're a little bit more complicated compared to something like a Glock, or a CZ-P10C, for that matter, while we're talking about it. And but for the era, this design was clever, robust, and relatively easy to work on. It's really cool. New parts do require some hand fitting sometimes, but other times they don't. So the Beretta, as you can see, it is very, very, very different here. It has a separate locking block here that helps it lock up rather than those lugs. Yeah, take a look at that thing. So when a round fires, the barrel and the slide move rearward together for a short distance. The frame pushes on this plunger here. You can see that, and it pushes the locking block down and out of the way, and that allows the barrel to continue moving rearward. And so the barrel stops with the locking block. And you can also see this track here, that along there. I don't know if you can see that. It's really filthy in my gun and filled with goop. Yeah, the barrel along here rides there. In fact, I have these here to point with. I should probably do that. So these ride in those. It's all very technical, the language that we use here. So the barrel stops with the locking block. The slide goes rearward, and then it'll stop at the back of its travel, move forward, strip around out of the handy magazine, and it picks up the barrel and the locking block as it goes, and everything locks back up. So because the 92's barrel travels directly inline and rearward, this gun has significantly diminished recoil. I've noticed that I have a particularly easy time shooting this gun at longer distances, although I'm not sure if that's the mechanism helping me out with some mechanical accuracy, or if this gun is simply easier to shoot well. Some folks say that track that the barrel moves in does really help to make the lockup repeatable and consistent. Maybe, I can't say, but I doubt that it hurts. So internally, the Beretta is clearly Italian. There are a lot of parts, but each of them displays a sort of elegance of design. The gun is beautiful inside, like a fine watch, and more than any other gun on earth, I really like working on Berettas. So we can see our CZ barrel fits back in here, and we can feel the barrel drop down in those lugs, and it's locked in. And you can feel that it would have to tilt down in order to come free. So we know that's where our tilting barrel business comes from. We're gonna put our guide rod back in. Yeah, it's funny how much lighter this slide is than other guns. All of the weight is in the frame on the CZ. So we're gonna put this gun back in our interior rails there. Look at how smooth that is. It's very smooth, and check out the fit. Yeah, it's really good. All right, so we line up that notch again, put our pin back in, if you can. Try not to get an idiot mark. There we go. I have to hold it closer to me half the time to get it to go back together. Alrighty, so you can see once more our barrel tilts down and out of place. Then it would pick up a new round, and then the barrel locks right back up. Cool. Very awesome. I hope this is interesting. We'll see. This is kind of an experiment. All right, so you can see here's the recesses for the locking block. In goes the barrel, and you can see those fit right in there. And in goes our guide rod. And check this out. If I press on the plunger, you can see how that locking block would move out of the way. Alrighty, back on the exterior rails. So the open slide design, Beretta says that this helps with reliability. We'll talk more about that, but I think there's something to that in a big way. All right. And you can see the locking block move back up to where it should be. All right, as we move rearward, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. The slide and barrel move together a little bit. You see that? They all move together, and then the locking block drops out of the way. The slide continues because it's not being held by the locking block. The slide moves back forward and picks it back up again, and it locks back up in place. Now that we've looked inside, what was each of these guns designed to do? Well, I think the SP-01 Tactical, as the name implies, is very tactical. This would be an excellent military weapon. The finish is utilitarian, the trigger is utilitarian, it holds piles of rounds, it has great sights, the gun is very reliable, it's decocker only. This gun is way too large to carry, and the features are too serious for competition. This gun means business and would serve you well in some dangerous and far-flung corner of the world. Awesome military pistol. This Beretta is actually a 40 caliber scaled down to 9mm, the 96A1. So it's as beefy as possible. It's got a great trigger, a beautiful finish, it holds tons of rounds, and is still really kind of fancy. Call me biased, but this gun could do pretty much anything. Berettas have proven themselves in combat as very large carry guns and in the hands of cops. I'd say that Beretta, though, in this case was targeting just the civilian and law enforcement market. Beretta people love Berettas, and we definitely love our 92A1s. So if Beretta releases something, the folks that are into Berettas will kind of just buy it regardless of what it was actually originally for. So all that stuff is fine and good. How do these things actually feel and shoot? Well, the CZ is supremely comfortable, but also supremely heavy, like a brick that you just don't want to put down. In fact, when you run out of bullets, it can function as a convenient bludgeon. This thing is heavy as fuck. The CZ-75's contoured grip was kind of an outlier in 1975 and is really the beginning of the ergonomic modern grips like the PPQ and the P30. After you shoot a CZ-75 for a while, you just kind of expect more from firearm grips after that. You know, you'll find yourself saying, well, God, if they could get it this right in 1975, why does this other gun feel like I'm holding a pile of Legos? So they did a really good job there. Absolutely. After holding the CZ, though, the Beretta feels almost light. For all the clever contours on the SP-01, also, the Beretta grip is simply perfect. It's not too fat, it's not too thin, it doesn't have too much checkering or too little. This is the way I want every gun to feel. The Beretta has maybe the most natural feel of any gun that I've ever picked up. The CZ isn't far behind, but this is all just wildly subjective personal preference anyway. By the way, I really like these very pleasant, squishy rubber grips on the SP-01. They smell like grandma, but they feel like home. And yeah, you do kind of smell this gun anytime that you're near it. So that's a downside, but I don't know. They almost feel like those really comfortable, squishy revolver grips. So +1 for that. I've heard it said that the Beretta grip is excessively fat, morbidly obese even, ready to die from an aorta full of Reubens and pig meat, but I don't find that to be the case at all. I'm not a large guy, and there's nothing more comfortable to me than the Beretta. But experience has taught me that you will probably think that the CZ is more comfortable should you try these two for yourself. Onto the slides. We're going to save the triggers for last. The CZ slide, it's hard to manipulate. It just is. There's barely any slide there. The serrations aren't particularly pronounced. My hands slip just about every time I go to use the front slide serration, so I just don't. CZ had to make this damn thing reliable, because if you ever had to clear a malfunction, you just would not be able to. I'm kind of kidding, but not really. Yeah. Once my hands were so sweaty, thanks to the 100-degree heat, that I had to actually rack the slide on a picnic table. And yes, that was the same picnic table that I fell into and almost broke my Trigicon MRO. Yeah. Stupid table. The Beretta slide, on the other hand, is a joy to use. The recoil spring on Berettas feels substantially lighter than other guns, not just the CZ. I mean, pick a gun, it feels lighter to me. Berettas, though, are just generally easy to use. The gun doesn't have any front serrations, but you can kind of pinch this relief here. That's how I do it when the gun is not, 3 feet away from my chest with my arms fully extended. Yeah, it definitely works when I want to look super cool and tactical, doing my press checks. So the decocker on the CZ faces rearward. Why does that matter, you ask? Well, it's magical. I'm not fond of manual safeties on single-action, double-action guns, and to have only a decocker facing in a direction where it shan't be accidentally engaged is an excellent design decision. On HKs in particular, where the decocker faces the other direction, one might find that the gun has been accidentally decocked, or the gun interrupted in some way if your thumb should pull the decocker down under recoil. That can't happen if it's facing this direction. Let's look at what I'm talking about, actually. So here is an HK. If I have my thumb up like this, under recoil, it can actually pull that down, and then some weird stuff happens there. It actually locks up the trigger, so that's no good. I don't like that. Even though I love my HKs, that's not a great thing. Much has been said about the location of the Beretta safety decocker. None of what has been said about it has been positive. Many folks, when they run the slide, complain that their hands engage the safety and render the gun far too safe at an inopportune moment of danger. This has never happened to me ever, not once. I have fired close to 10,000 rounds from this gun, and never have I found the safety to be a problem. But all the same, I don't like manual safeties on double-action, single-action guns, so I installed the Beretta G kit on this gun, and that converts it to decocker only. So even though I hadn't had a problem, enough people have had the problem that I didn't want to risk leaving the safety in, because I believe all of you, and I trust you, and if you say that's a bad idea, damn it, you're probably right. I just love the G-Kit decocker. The parts are all steel. They're generally nicer than the stock ones. It's just a really good upgrade. Beretta is onto something with that kit. And it's really cool that Beretta listens to us in that way and does stuff like that. The SP-01 has a very large and very nice magazine release. However, the magazines kind of lazily slide out of the gun. Well, of course, not now that we're looking at it, but yeah, they just don't feel like they really want to get out of there, Look at that. They just kind of fall out. So I'm not crazy on that. The Beretta one, on the other hand, bam, it gets those things out of there, even with the slide locked open. Yeah, so that's superior in my opinion. You may not care about that. Honestly, I don't care that much about it either, but it's worth mentioning. The triggers, though. The triggers, that's where this gets kind of complicated. So, first, the CZ trigger is good for this gun's intended purpose. The trigger is combat functional and really just kind of unremarkable. The double action pull is long, but mostly pretty smooth. You can actually kind of hear some of the creaky bits. The single action pull is gritty and kind of creepy. There's sort of no defined wall. You know, you kind of get to this point here after the take up, you kind of squeeze through some of the mushy bits, and then it breaks somewhere in there. I don't think of the trigger as being bad. It's just functional. It's kind of like a Glock trigger. It just does what it's supposed to do. Nothing more, nothing less. And it's not really going to impact your ability to get good hits with this gun. But all the same, when you put it up next to the Beretta, that kind of puts it into sharp contrast. You're probably not going to notice if you're just shooting this gun alone, but when you put them together, yeah, you'll start to notice that there's some weirdness there. So the reset on the CZ is kind of long. Yeah, you see that? The Beretta, on the other hand, has an amazing trigger, one of the best of any pistol I've ever owned, and it's one of the reasons I bought a 92A1 in the first place. So, the double action pull is long and heavy, as you would want it to be. Without your manual safety, that is your safety, that double action pull. But though the pull is long and heavy, it's very smooth and even. I get really good hits with this double action pull. Doesn't really impact me that much. The single action pull has some light and smooth take up. That brings us to a very well-defined wall right there. Apply a little more force, and you get a very clean break with a crisp and satisfying snap. One more time. Yeah, with the reset this time. For a double action, single action gun, this reset is very short and very tactile and audible. Berettas do have kind of a strange reset in that there is a quiet click before the loud final one indicating that the gun is ready to fire again. But all Berettas do this, and you adjust to it within, I don't know, a magazine, if you even notice it. Most folks don't even notice that it's happening. In the interest of full disclosure, also, my Beretta has the D-spring installed for a lighter double action pull, and I have done some work internally to smooth the trigger. But prior to those upgrades, this pistol still had the best trigger of any gun under $1,000. Now, though, after an afternoon of work, if it even took that, it was probably, I don't know, 30 minutes or something. Now it feels like a $2,000 custom pistol. The Beretta trigger gets none of the respect that it deserves. So, how do these differences work in the real world? In short, both of these pistols are insanely fun to shoot. Because the SP-01 is so damn heavy, you can shoot this gun really fast, and it's very flat shooting thanks to the heft. And a lot of people say that it has a low bore axis, but the bore axis isn't actually that much lower than something like the Beretta, as you can see lining these up. So, yes, it has a lower bore axis than other pistols, but it's not as absurdly low as folks make it out to be. But anyway, this gun is super fun to shoot. The decocker puts the hammer at half cock, like we were saying, so your first double action shot is lighter than a lot of other similar guns and easier to get on target. Although this trigger isn't the greatest, it's still better than most other guns at this price, and it's totally fine. I look forward to this trigger these days, and with 18+1 rounds, the magazine feels almost bottomless. These Meprolite sights, though I'm not fond of Meprolite, the company, as many of you know, they make it easy to hit targets at great distance. And by the way, my issue with Meprolite was due to their customer service being very, very rude to me, and I did not like the way that they conducted themselves. Just thought I'd throw that out there. With the CZ, I do have a serious problem running the slide when I've been sprinting and my hands are sweaty. This finish is slick, and while very protective, it's kind of meh to look upon, especially next to the lovely Brunaton finish of the Beretta. I just don't like this finish. It reminds me of the slickness of the newer Glocks. I always feel like my hand is sliding off of it, and I just don't like that. But that's a CZ-75 for you. It's just part of the deal, and you adjust. If the slide were larger, it wouldn't be a CZ-75 anymore. As for reliability with the SP-01, I've fired over 3,000 rounds through this gun without any malfunctions. It runs great, and it will continue to run well for the rest of my natural and perhaps unnatural life. I have complete faith in the CZ. However, the tight slide to frame fit makes it so that I have to clean the CZ a little bit more frequently to maintain that feeling of smoothness when you run the slide. But really, who cares? Just clean the damn thing every 500 rounds, and even if you don't, I don't know if it would necessarily malfunction. I really can't say. I just clean my guns when I feel like they need it, and that varies pretty wildly from model to model. The 92A1 manages to feel like both a combat pistol and a hand-built custom gun all at once. So, once you feel this thing, you'll find yourself thinking, why the hell can't I just have it all? Why can't I have everything? Why can't I have a Ferrari and a beautiful wife and a job that I love? And this Beretta has it all, so why the hell can't I have it all? It's a very inspiring gun in that way. Also, the Beretta has less recoil than the CZ, even though it weighs less. The slide is easy to manipulate, and it looks great doing it. Those sights are kind of small. There's a quick refresher on what they look like. But them being small, I find that helps me maybe make some more precise shots with this gun. However, they aren't night sights, and there aren't as many night sight options for the Berettas. I'll probably stick some Trijicon HDs on here soon. I really like the ones with the orange front sight. This Beretta does not have a beveled mag well. If I can figure out how to get the magazine. Okay. Does not have a beveled magazine well, as you can see. Initially, when I first got the gun, I thought that was going to be a problem. It's really not. The CZ has a colossally beveled mag well, and I find mag changes to be just as easy and smooth on each of these guns. So, the trigger. Once more, though, with the Beretta, it all comes back to the trigger. I can't shoot any gun on earth as fast as I can shoot the Beretta. I am an utterly terrible shooter, and this gun makes me look somewhat competent. Yeah, but I've saved the best point about the Beretta for last. Of all the guns that I've owned, the Beretta 92A1 is the most reliable. I'm convinced that this gun is unstoppable and indestructible. It runs in the mud. It runs in the rain. It runs when it's fired thousands of rounds without being clean. I shoot it until it's so hot I can't touch it, and then it sits in the hot South Carolina sun for an hour and then gets shot some more. It doesn't care. This gun just doesn't care. It's fired close to 10,000 rounds. The gun looks worn, but it's got another, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 rounds left in it. No parts have broken, and I don't think any are really close to it. So, final thoughts. Which should you buy? Either way, you win. If you pick either one of these pistols, you win. So, buy both. But if you can't or don't want to, which is totally reasonable and probably the smart thing to do between you and me, both choices are great. These are so close in quality, and it's really just going to come down to which of the two just feels best in your little mitts. I know a lot of people who much prefer the grip of the CZ. I know just as many people who would say that the Beretta feels superior, like me. Both of these guns have performed without a hitch. I shoot them both very well, and hell, if I didn't suck at shooting, I'd probably sign up to compete with either one of these willingly. But the Beretta is my favorite. It's not just my favorite of these two. It's my favorite gun, period, ever on Earth of all time. I consider this to be the best gun humans have ever produced. It's probably the best gun ever produced by sentient beings in this galaxy. From the moment I first picked up a Beretta, I was in love. So, in my youth, I took multiple classes from a well-known firearms instructor, and he is a big proponent of Glocks. And why not? Glocks are awesome guns. But one day, he had a box with him, and he opened it up and showed me his shiny new Beretta M9 that he had recently purchased to familiarize himself with the design, and he let me play with it. I felt that M9 in my hand, and I immediately gave the loaner Glock 19 back to him and shot the M9 for the rest of the weekend, while he shook his head in disapproval. So we're good friends, me and the Beretta. I love it, and it loves me back. I have too many guns. I know I do. You know I do. But for all the nice pistols around, I really mostly just shoot this one. Yeah, If there's a choice, I pick this one. It always goes to the range, even if we're making a video about something else. We're family, me and this Beretta. I tell you this because you have undoubtedly sensed some bias from me in this video, and it's worth noting why. Don't let my intense and burning love of the Beretta influence your decision between these two lovely guns, but you should know that this pistol inspires that kind of devotion in folks. Don't get me wrong. The CZ does everything almost as well in my mind, and it inspires the same kind of devotion. But the Beretta, it has real fucking heart. It's not a pistol, it's family, and it'll be protecting mine until I depart from this world to go back to hell where I belong. And you know what? I'll probably take the damn Beretta with me. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you soon. Good night. Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. We laughed a lot, we hugged a lot, we cried a lot, we learned a lot, and we made some new friends. It meant a lot to me too. If you enjoyed this video, learned something, or simply thought that I was a weird guy and would like to see more, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it got kind of weird there at the end, you know, when I started talking about the Beretta and stuff, but you stuck it out. You're a good friend. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll be back soon in a new video, which will probably be a range review. See you soon. Good night.